Autonomous car driving company Cruise, owned by General Motors, has been suspended from operating their taxis in San Francisco effective immediately. Is this a big setback for Tesla's FSD and their eventual robo-taxi fleet, which is a big part of the next stage of Tesla, and according to many, including ARK Invest, is how Tesla stock reaches that next level? We're going to talk about all of this, but just before we do, I want to remind you that I have a completely free newsletter. It comes out every single Sunday, and if you want to make sure you get it, have a look for the link in the description below. So there was a car crash that happened on October the 2nd, and this resulted in a pedestrian getting severe injuries. And this car crash involved a Cruise autonomous vehicle. Now, from what I can tell, the Cruise vehicle didn't hit the pedestrian, but instead the pedestrian was hit by a motorcyclist, which then propelled them into the path of the Cruise vehicle. The car was able to detect the collision and it came to a stop, but it then tried to pull over in order to stop any further injuries from happening, and in doing so it dragged the pedestrian with it. The DMV then obtained footage from Cruise, but they claimed that Cruise didn't give them the entirety of the footage. The part where the Cruise vehicle actually decided to do the pullover maneuver was not included. So the DMV have said that Cruise misrepresented what actually happened. Attempting to pull over after colliding with the pedestrian, according to the DMV, actually indicates that Cruise's vehicles may lack the ability to respond in a safe and appropriate manner during incidents involving a pedestrian, so as not to unnecessarily put the pedestrian or others at risk of further injury. So all of this and a number of other incidents that have been happening over the last few months has resulted in the suspension of Cruise participating in autonomous driving in San Francisco. They are still allowed to operate their taxis as long as they have a driver in there to step in case of an incident like this. So they've not been banned completely, and also Waymo, who is another autonomous driving company that operates in San Francisco, again with like a robo-taxi kind of idea, has not been affected by this. So like I was just saying, this isn't the first time that Cruise have run into a little bit of trouble. There's been a number of different incidences, but in the summer, I believe there was one where a Cruise vehicle actually interfered with a fire engine or a fire truck. So I think the momentum of these things have built, and now we've had this and they've just decided to put a ban on it and just suspend it for now. And in case you didn't know, I said at the beginning of this video as well, Cruise is actually owned by General Motors, and General Motors are having a far from good time at the moment. They've just had their earnings come out, and it turns out they are currently losing about $200 million a week. And now the UAW have announced that they will be expanding their strike to include GM's largest and most profitable plant. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens, but things are really not looking all that good for GM right now. So what does all this mean for Tesla? Because obviously when us investors get news that pushes the self-driving, the autonomous driving field forward, we get quite excited. Like when we had the news that Waymo and Cruise would be able to operate taxis in San Francisco, autonomous taxis. That's quite exciting. It opens the way, it paves the way for Tesla. And we know that Tesla behind the scenes are working very, very hard and really progressing with their FSD. On the flip, when things happen that aren't good, and when, media is responding to incidents that have happened and it doesn't seem very good and the public are getting fearful, that also gives us some worries. Like, how will this impact Tesla? Well, firstly, the incident is obviously sad because someone got injured, and it is clearly somewhat of a setback for the self-driving industry as a whole. But this wasn't a worldwide ban on autonomous driving. This was one company in one area. Like we said, Waymo are still operating as normal, and Cruise are actually still able to operate as long as they have a driver there to step in if necessary. I think it highlights that safety and reliability need to be demonstrated, and it may mean that regulations get even tighter, but I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, because ultimately we want autonomous driving to be safer than human driving. That's what we all want. So if it does, get a little bit tricky for now, ultimately that will be a good thing, in my opinion. You could argue that this may increase the timelines and make it even more difficult for Tesla to get an operational robo-taxi fleet. But do remember as well that this suspension seems to be more about the fact that information was withheld rather than the actual autonomous vehicle itself. A positive thing here is that Tesla can look at these incidences and make sure that the same thing doesn't happen for their vehicles. And they can decide to request regulatory approval only when they are sure that their technology is as safe as it can be. Now, obviously, it is really easy to extrapolate this incident to autonomous driving as a whole and suddenly say that this vehicle acted not very well in the situation and it resulted in someone getting really injured. But there are differences between all of these different companies. And remember that Tesla are taking this slow. They have the data advantage. They are collecting all the data out there to train their neural nets to make FSD as safe and as good as it can be. And Tesla's full self-driving is using end-to-end AI. It's being trained on large data sets of images and real-world driving situations rather than actually being coded. So it learns to drive by itself just like humans would. And all of this alongside the fact that Tesla have the data advantage and now they have the compute power to go along with that gives me the impression still that they are going to be the ones that are able to scale their vehicles, scale them into a robotaxi fleet. I don't think other companies are going to be able to scale like Tesla can. And on top of that, of course, they are very widely integrated. They have their own self-charging network. They have their own production, energy production and energy storage, etc., etc. So let me know what you think about this incident. And if you do want to support the channel in any way, I have a Patreon and I have channel memberships. So check that out if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in another one very shortly.